Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight on episode 11, season 2 of the Standoff with Brad and Richie here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We're here live every Wednesday on Facebook throughout the season. Good evening, Richie. Another interesting round with some massive blowouts to start the round and then to end it with a disappointing Warriors performance on the Sunday.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed the whole round, Brad. I think there was at least a 20, 30-minute period where I really didn't enjoy. But what about you?
Yeah, it's the same, really. A bit surprised by the blowouts, which we're obviously going to cover in a little bit. But, yeah, and I'm sure we're going to dive deep into that Warriors performance as well. But while we're here live on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m, you can also catch our show via the podcast on iHeartRadio at your convenience. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. As always, we're going to cover everything you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a review of the round 9 matches and our picks. We'll then stop and answer some questions from all of you. Then we'll preview the Magic Round clashes and make our picks before ending the night with some overseas and Super League news, time pending, obviously. So tune in to get your rugby league news and remember to send us comments and questions throughout the show. And let's just get straight into the top stories, Richie.
Let's go.
Suppose the first one, we've been talking about it for a few weeks now, but TJ Perenara is re-signed with New Zealand Rugby and will not be a Rooster, going back to the Hurricanes. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, being based in Wellington, I think the Hurricanes here need him more than the Roosters do. So, yeah, the Roosters will march on and find other players to pull in underneath their sombrero. Yeah. So, yeah, no biggie for the game of league, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I'm only disappointed that we don't get to see how he'd go, but it's not the end of the world. And, I'm sure the Hurricanes will need him. So, yeah, good to see sticking with rugby and staying there, because I don't know if I wanted to really see him at the Roosters anyway. I would have preferred him in a Warriors jersey myself.
Yeah, exactly. Keep him in NZ. He's a Kiwi.
Definitely. And the next bit of news, Peter Hiku ruled out for the season after his surgery. So another Warrior bites the dust. A bit heartbreaking to hear it. I was hoping he'd have a return and add some spark to our edge, but not to be.
Yeah, it looks like watching the Warriors, it looks like we're lacking a bit of experience out in the centres, and it's a shame, how he really could have helped shore up our edges, but not to be, unfortunately. Wish him all the best for his recovery.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because it was the final year of his deal, because he got a 1-year extension at the end of last year. And there's been no news on if they're going to offer him a new deal or what perhaps. And I suppose it's a bit harder to convince a team to re-sign you if you're not out on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you do then, Brad, with your coach's hat on? What would you do with the centres at the Warriors with that news?
I'd probably offer him another deal. Probably drop the coin. Even if I wouldn't say lowball him, but just say, you've been a bit injury prone. Here's a deal if you want to stick around. And if he takes it, you've got an experienced player there. But getting the crystal ball out, by this time next year, Rocco Berry could be nicely experienced and take that spot off him anyway. So it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting time.
Yeah, the wingers will miss him because, the last couple of years, whoever's played outside of Hiku has normally gone good guns. I think he was playing inside of Fusatua and when he was scoring a lot of tries, and then the following year he switches sides and Big Kenny, he ends up being Dally M Winger of the Year. So I don't think it's a coincidence. So we miss a bit there, but yeah, all the best from though.
Yeah, and more Warriors news. Jazz Tavanga is rumoured to potentially be on the move to the Bulldogs. I've heard that he would prefer to stay with the Warriors, and the Warriors have tabled an offer. But Jazz has come out and acknowledged that there are other teams sniffing around him too. What do you think about it, Richie? Would you sign him again? Would you keep him around? Obviously, the Warriors have put an offer out, but would you make sure he sticks around?
Well, from what I hear, yeah, you're right. His preference is to stay, but he also wants to get what he's worth. So I think, in my mind, I guess it depends what he perceives that he's worth. But he is a good player. He has his patches where he has a few brain snaps, but he does add a lot. And a couple of years ago, he was Dalian Interchange Player of the Year. So he does add a lot of energy. And when he's on, you can't deny that the Warriors are better for it.
Yeah, I'd prefer him to stick around. If he did end up at the Bulldogs, it'd be interesting to see how that goes with him and Jack Hetherington there. Be quite a formidable forward pack. It's not one you would take lightly, but yeah, fingers crossed he accepts the offer the Warriors have given him and he sticks around, because I think he's quite valuable.
Yeah, indeed, I tend to agree with you there.
And the next bit of news, Wayne Bennett has confirmed that Adam Reynolds will be leaving the Rabbitohs at the end of the year. The Sharks and Broncos have offers on the table, and Reynolds rumoured to have told his teammates that he's going to be going to Brisbane on a 3-year deal starting next year. Reports are it's around $2.25 million for the 3 years. What are your thoughts on it? I thought he would have been at the Sharks because he apparently didn't want to leave Sydney, but Broncos, it sounds like it is. Yeah,
and I've read reports that Cronulla have given him a deadline too. So it's looking likely that he's going to Queensland, which is good for the Broncos. They need somebody like that. I don't think it will solve all of their problems. I think they still need to put a few pieces of the puzzle together, but he's a start. If that's what eventuates and he heads to the Broncos, it's definitely a start,
Yeah, definitely. I think getting a player like that in helps you get other players as well. I think we've talked about it briefly with the Warriors side of things with Reece Walsh. He's an exciting young player that other players want to play with. So you get a guy like Reynolds, who we'll talk about the game very shortly, but the Rabbitohs, what they looked without him, that kind of impact he has on a game will make players potentially want to go to the Broncos to play with him. So, I think it's a great move if that's where he ends up. With all the way the rumors have come out today, I'm pretty sure we'll hear about it before the show next week, so we can dive a bit deeper next week. But yeah, if it is true, I think it's a great move for the Broncos, especially with the news now officially announced that Xavier Coates is leaving to go to the Storm.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, they want to start pulling in a couple of big players because all we've heard about so far this season are the big talents leaving Brisbane. So, it's nice for them to get this little feather in their hat if it plays out.
Definitely. Yeah, so we'll have more news on that for the show next Wednesday. So we'll fill you in a bit more once we've got a bit more information. But the second to last bit of news, the NRL stood down a bunker official after the Eels Roosters game for missing the foul play on Drew Hutchinson and James Tedesco. The NRL have come out after the game and said that both players should have been sin-binned, and that was missed. And because of that, the Roosters weren't allowed to use their 18th man, which they would have been eligible to use. What were your thoughts on it? It happened so quick. It was in the same play. But what did you think of both calls?
The Niokore one was similar to what we saw when the Roosters played the Dragons, where Tedesco got hit by Pereira, where he's sort of approaching the tackle and then has fallen. I think if he stays on his feet, he still would have got hit with a shoulder because it was a two-man tackle and Niakore's arm was kind of forced to be tucked. But, him falling has caused him to get collected in the head. I think the Dylan Brown one was worse. And obviously that's what saw Hutchison break some ribs and I think puncture a lung, and he had to head off to hospital. Yeah, he had to head off to hospital. That's no good. He was, Dylan Brown looked like he was channeling his Billy Slater there. with the way he came in with the knees. But what I find interesting is the NRL have stood down the officials, but I hear that they're also investigating Trent Robinson for his comments on them being incompetent during his press conference. So on one hand, they're admitting that they got it wrong, but then on the other hand, they're looking at whacking Trent Robinson with a fine possibly. So interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting part because they admitted it was wrong and they stood them down, but then they're potentially going to punish Trent Robertson for calling it out. I agree with you on the Tedesco thing. I think he does have a habit of sliding down into a tackle, which is why he gets hit with so many head highs. But the Dylan Brown one, sliding with your knees, that's a no-go. So he should never have done it. They have helped the Warriors out a little bit with having a few players not there. As Paul said, is there a difference from being incompetent and just making a mistake? I wouldn't say they're incompetent with this one. I think they just made a bad call because they did still tell the ref that it was a penalty. They just didn't make it as severe. And when you see a few weeks ago, the bunker told the ref to send Josh Curran to the bin for a head clash, it just seems to be a sliding scale on how if they overreact or underreact, and they need to find that sweet spot in the middle.
I think the way it played out is what kind of led Trent Robinson to make that comment, is because the bunker did look at it many times and actually didn't suggest to the ref to do anything, and then he was put on report at halftime. So it was a weird one. So I kind of can't blame Trent Robinson too much because I was thinking the same thing, but. Yeah, I guess you can't say those kind of things openly and not get away with it.
Yeah, definitely. So that's the news we've got for right now. So we may as well crack straight into the Round 9 review. Starting on Thursday, where the Storm defeated the Rabbitohs 50-0. Wasn't the score I was imagining for this game, but the Storm, I thought, were pretty fantastic. And the Rabbitohs, I think they just looked shell-shocked. I think once the Storm clicked into action, they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, not the scoreline I had in my head going into the game either. But yeah, once the Storm got going and the Rabbitohs maybe looked like they dropped their head a little bit, the Storm's left edge with Olam and obviously the Fox collecting 6 tries, they look pretty unstoppable. And South Sydney were missing some key players, but I don't think many of them will be too proud watching that back when they review the game.
No, Adokar being the first player in 71 years to score 6 tries in a game. I know there's been a bit of flack on him saying a lot of the tries anyone could have scored, but I think that just shows you how good the Storm are, that they can put players into a scoring position every time they get the ball, basically. So I think it was very good, very dangerous, and it's still a team without perhaps their best player out on the field, with Pappenhausen still out. So, scary times, I think, for teams coming up against Melbourne. The Rabbitohs, I think this was the biggest indicator of why they should have offered Reynolds a longer-term deal, in my opinion. Without him out there, they had no direction. I still don't think Cody Walker is the type of player that can lead the side like Reynolds can. I think he's a good addition to the halves, but he's not the dominant half. So I'm not sure what they're going to do in their halves unless they do decide to give Benji another year. But could be interesting times ahead for them.
Yeah, I tend to agree with your comments there about Cody Walker. He's more of a run and gun sort of 5'8", isn't he? Sort of in the mold of Sean Johnson. Yeah. That's more his role rather than controlling the team. But, it's more than just Reynolds. They're still missing Latrell Mitchell and guys like that. So I think this will be a bit of an anomaly. I think once they get players back, they'll click back into gear.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. They it's not like their season's over or anything after this, but yeah, it's probably very very disappointing for them and probably hit their egos a little bit. But yeah, we'll see how they bounce back this weekend. They've got a good matchup, which they should put some points on. But yeah, we'll go straight into Friday's first game with the Panthers getting a bit jealous of the Storm, so trying to do the same thing and beating the Sharks 48-0. Two blowouts in the first two games. Yeah, it was another surprise. Again, like the Storm game, I expected the Panthers to win and to win well, but I didn't expect the Sharks to be as bad as they were.
Yeah, the first two games, you really saw two teams give some pretty comprehensive warnings to the rest of the competition. The Panthers' playmakers just look head and shoulders above any other halves pairing that's going around right now, and they pretty much had their way in this game. The Sharks look a lot off the pace, but the coaching situation has obviously not helped them, and they hooked Townsend with 30 minutes to play. They took him off and put Moylan on, and I thought it just spoke to how low they are and how low they're going with their confidence right now.
Yeah, they kind of hit the trifecta of playing badly because they made too many errors, made poor attacking decisions, and they missed too many tackles. And you can't do any of those against Penrith because if you give Penrith an inch, they're going to take a mile. And I think the scary thing for me with the Panthers is that they don't rush. They were taking their time and they were calm and composed and just starved the Sharks of possession and made them pay for it. So, I think it's just the Panthers are just going to keep winning. And I think the Sharks, they're getting stuck in that little battle to make the 8. And I think they're going to get left behind if they don't turn things around quick.
Yeah, I think that's already starting to happen. I think you saw like last year when the Warriors made their coaching change mid-season, it could go one way or the other. And for the Warriors, they almost galvanized. But with the Sharks, they're going the other way, I think. So you're not looking good for them this year.
No, not at all. And that leads to the last game on Friday, which was the Eels defeating the Roosters 31-18. Finally, a more competitive match, but it was still a little bit of a blowout. I thought for the losing side with the Roosters, I thought Matt Ikavalu, he had big shoes to fill replacing Brent Morris, and I think he had a good game. He scored a hat trick, and he didn't get to play all of the game. He went off with an HIA, but I think he had a pretty good outing in his first proper stint in what will be his position quite possibly for the rest of the season, if not longer.
Yeah, this game bummed me out because this was the game where I tipped the Roosters and you tipped the Eels. But, the Roosters did show a lot of resilience in the face of all their injuries. It just looked like a bridge too far. It wasn't vintage from the Eels, I don't think. They had something like, I think it was 63% possession, but they didn't really kick clear of the Roosters until a couple minutes left. It was still a tight on the scoreboard. So,
and that was also against the Roosters team with a few guys that went off injured too. So
exactly.
I think Bryce Cartwright, though, for the Eels, when he came on, he sparked them a bit. He scored a double himself, and then, I think once they got their nose ahead, they just never looked back. And, the Roosters casualty ward's getting bigger. They're going to have to buy another house next door to fit them all in, with Drew Hutchinson out now as well after the cannonball knees from Dylan Brown. Disappointing for them, and it's going to make their road to the finals even tougher now. But I still just can't write them out. I know I said last year they're going to not make the 8, and I'm hoping I'm right there because that's a hell of a prediction. But you still just can't count them out. They've got a lot of talent there still.
You can't, especially with Trent Robinson pulling the strings. You can't write them off. When they started stacking up injuries, I started tipping against them, and they still kept finding ways to win. So I think in that way, they're kind of similar to the Storm, where whoever comes up to replace the injured person just sort of clicks in with the rest of the team and does their job. So Yeah, I don't think you can write them off.
Yeah. And then the first game on Saturday, we saw the Knights defeat the Raiders 24-16. I just don't know what to say about the Raiders anymore. They were atrocious. They ran out to a 16-0 lead at halftime and looked like they'd finally got themselves back into action. And then the Knights just took them to pieces in that second half, scoring 24 unanswered points. I thought for the Knights, Phoenix Crossland coming in to replace Blake Green, he offered a new attacking threat and looked a lot better than what they've been getting from Green. And Jaden Brayley was really good in hooker. And the Knights, they're just, not the Knights, sorry, the Raiders are just atrocious. Woeful.
Oh, it's a good comeback from the Knights. They've been looking pretty low on confidence lately. So they would have been happy to bag the 2 points whatever way they could. So to come back from 16-0 is pretty good from them. The Raiders, who knows what's going on there? I read that in the last 5 games in the second half, they've conceded 93 points and scored only 8. So that's pretty alarming. Yeah. I don't know if it's just obviously something mental, but yeah, tough to say what they do to stem that tide.
Yeah, I think if they don't do it quickly, they're not playing playoffs this year. I don't see them making the 8 if they keep playing this way. So it's going to be interesting times ahead for Ricky Stewart and should make for some interesting post-match conferences from him if his team doesn't turn it around. But yeah, big job ahead for them.
Yeah, and saying that, he's, along with Trent Robinson, he's another one that the NRL are looking at for his, I think he murmured an F word under his breath during his press conference. So yeah. I understand his frustration. Ricky's a passionate guy, and yeah, I think he's not been as bad as what he could be.
Yeah, 100%. So going to be great times ahead to talk about their games, I'm sure. But that leads us to the second game on Saturday with the Titans defeating the Tigers 36-28. The Titans had me a bit worried in this one. They, just like last week, they scored 3 tries in like the first 12 minutes and looked to be well on the way to a heavy win. And then the Tigers brought it back and they started going to and fro a little bit with the lead until the Titans kind of pulled out at the end. I think for the Titans, if they want to be a contender to be in the playoffs, they've got to put games like this against the bottom of the barrel teams away nice and early. The fact that the Tigers were so competitive shows a lot about their heart, but it puts question marks all over the Titans' potential.
Yeah, well, a similar thing happened when they played the Broncos. You know, they got off to that blistering start. So similar here, where I think they put on 3 tries in 3 sets through Sami, Peachy, and Brian Kelly, and then the Tigers sort of clawed their way back. I think Adam Dewey was pretty good and orchestrated a lot of the Tigers' play as they came back, but it definitely appeared as though both teams left their defence at home. Yeah.
There was a couple of games like that in this round where defence seemed to be the far most thought. But yeah, I think Titans still have a chance of playoffs. It's just the wheels are shaking a bit, and the Tigers are no chance of making the finals. But they're by no means easy beats, which is good to see. It's good to see them stay competitive, even though they're not getting the results.
Yeah, exactly, mate. I think they'll still struggle and finish somewhere in that bottom 4, but you know, at least you're right. At least they're toughing out games and making it difficult for some sides.
Yeah. The last game on Saturday, we saw the Broncos defeat the Cowboys beat the Broncos, 19-18. This was one of the more entertaining games for me. I think both teams didn't really play their best. They were both very messy, but you could see how desperate both sides were to get the win. And the lead switched so many times throughout the game, and then it was like a last-minute kind of surge from the Cowboys where Jason Tobolo got them a try and then Valentine Holmes slotted the field goal. I think the Cowboys still have a very slim chance of making the 8, but they're going to have to rely on Tomalolo and Holmes to keep form that we've seen this week and last week from Holmes, if they have a shot. And the Broncos, I think, will be kicking themselves at letting this one go. If they had won this game, they would have finally beaten all the Queensland teams for a long time, and they could have said they were the best Queensland team in the comp. But I think they're looking better. I think Tyson Gamble is a real live wire in that halves, and he's pairing well with Milford. And if I was Kevin Walters, this is the halves pairing I'd be sticking with for this year. And I think if they keep this intensity up, they might get a few more upsets along the way.
Yeah, I mean, this was more like the Queensland big brother versus little brother matches we've become accustomed to in the past, and you used the word intensity, and I think that's what had a lot of. Both teams showed heaps of intensity, and we had a heart-stopping finish, which we've become used to seeing between these two sides in the past. The Valentine Holmes field goal was one of the weirdest field goal setups I've seen, but it worked, I was pretty pleased with the outcome, because I think this was one where we tipped differently as well, and I tipped Cowboys, so I was pretty pleased.
Yeah, so we had 3 picks different this week, and I got 2 out of 3. If this one had gone my way, I would have got all 3, and I would have been very happy. So I was disappointed that it didn't go my way, but it was really close. And
it was close.
Yeah. Hopefully we see more close matchups from these sides in the future, because we don't want to see more blowouts, I think.
Agreed.
And that brings us to the game we'll probably talk about the most. The first game on Sunday, with the Sea Eagles defeating the Warriors 38-32. What do you think? What's your first thoughts on this?
Where do you start? So, we didn't look too bad in patches, but once where the game swung was definitely after halftime, where we didn't ice that chance where we had I think it was something like a 3-on-1, and Cody Nikarima had the ball in his hands, and the ball ends up going into touch instead of over the try line in one of our players' hands. You just got to finish those chances, and then you almost felt like this is going to be a swing the other way, and then the next set Manly score, and then they end up going on a spree. We look very fragile on our left-hand side defence, on Manly's right-hand side attack where Jason Saab was, and you got to throw a lot of credit to Tommy Turbo. I mean, we made him look very good, but he was very good, and in his milestone game, he got a couple tries and had, I can't even remember how many tries he had, but he was making breaks and setting breaks up. We made him look like Superman pretty much. It swung with that botch from Cody. I see Nigel's put in the comments that he would have benched Cody there and then, and I was the same. When he threw that pass, I would have taken him off. Would have gone, no, we can't have that. It just swung. After that, they scored 5 tries basically in 5 sets. It was basically back to back to back to back. And at that point, it was like, they're going to put 50 on them here. It's going to go. But the Warriors, to their credit, they brought Reece Walsh on, and he kind of got them back into the game. He added a lot. It's great to see Chanel back out there, but I felt that when Walsh was there, Chanel wasn't letting him get the ball as much. It kept going to Chanel a lot, and Walsh was clearly the spark that was making things happen. So in my mind, he should have been getting the ball a lot more. And I could go on forever about the choice to have him on the bench. For me, I'd be starting him. And I don't want them to get into a habit where he's on the bench, and then when it looks like the game's completely out of the realms, they throw him on and go, okay, do something and get us the win here. It's not a good thing to do to such a young kid, putting that much pressure on him, but he takes it with both hands and goes for it. So, yeah, look, I wasn't too comfy with with Harris Tavita, he had a long stint on the sideline there. And when I heard during the week Nathan Brown saying possibly he's going to put him straight back in, that kind of baffled me. I kind of thought, why would you take out a kid who's been performing so well and he's in form, and then throwing in someone cold,
Yeah.
It's all good to say in hindsight, but when Walsh came on, he did provide a spark in attack. He did make a couple misses in defense too during that period where Manly scored a few tries, but on attack, he definitely sparked the comeback for us. So he makes us just look that much more dangerous in attack that you kind of just need to have him there. You agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And in defense of his defense, he was stuck out on the centers marking Tommy Turbo.
Yeah.
Running through that channel when that's a hard task for many players, let alone an 18-year-old kid in his third grade and the first grade. But I think they just look a better side with him out there. And I wasn't too keen on Brown's rotations in this game. I think he made a meal of it, to be honest. And there would have been changes I would have made as a couch coach sitting at home, but he gets paid the big bucks to make the decisions, and hopefully there's a rhyme to the reason that we find out later on. But I wasn't happy with this game.
Yeah, and I think Nathan Brown in the press conference kind of conceded he didn't really know what to do with Reece Walsh and how to bring him into the game. So, maybe that's a bit of a concession from him that he didn't quite get it right.
Yeah, he didn't get it right, but then he made the same calls again. So for this week, he's picked the same team. So, I don't want to go on for another hour about that. But, I think Manly just looks so good with Tommy Turbo there. Keeping him healthy is key. I think they still need to work on their defense as well. As great as they were, they still let in 32 points. And it kind of reminds me of the Warriors of old, where the Warriors' idea was as long as they score more tries than the other team, they'll be fine. And that seemed to be the approach Manly had in this one. And that's not going to work when you're going up against Melbourne or Penrith or Parramatta, for that matter. So, work on their D a bit, but I think they're going to have a lot of teams worried now that they've kicked into gear.
Yeah, I think they may be a decent smoky for top 8, after the start they had, as long as they keep those key players fit.
Yeah. And that takes us into the last game of the round, which was Sunday's game with the Dragons defeating the Bulldogs 32-18. Not really much to talk about in this one. It wasn't the most exciting game. There was only one try scored in the first half, and then the Dragons did enough in the second half to get a couple more tries on. I think the biggest talking point out of this game was Trent Barrett pulling Kyle Flanagan early in the piece. He had to come back on due to injuries to other players, but he's actually dropped in completely out of the side this week too, which I thought was a bit harsh. I don't think it's his fault that the Bulldogs are playing rubbish. I think the Dragons, they got this win and they're staying in the 8 for now, but I think they're still going to slide out. I think against a quality side, they'll get put to the sword. And bad days ahead for both sides here.
Yeah, you'd kind of expect the Dragons to beat the Broncos. Not the Broncos, the Bulldogs. The way the Bulldogs are traveling, I think they're destined for either the spoon or very close to it. I like you. It's tough to see why Flanagan was hooked. The whole team's sort of playing so poorly, and he's almost made his young playmaker a scapegoat there. But not much to say about the game. That's kind of what I expected. The Dragons didn't exactly set the world on fire for me either, but they kind of just did what I expected they would and finished the Dogs off. Yeah.
So, interesting times ahead for both of them. I think everyone's kind of just at the Bulldogs camp, just waiting for next year. So that's kind of affecting how you see them play on the field. And, the Dragons are still a long way off the pace, and they were just lucky they got that string of wins early on. But that's it for round 9. So we'll get the ladder up if we can, Paul, and go over the picks. So we had 3 games different this week. We had the Eels, Roosters, Broncos, Cowboys, and Seagulls, Warriors. I got 2 of those right, and Richard got 1. So I ended the round with 6 out of 8, and Richie got 5 out of 8, which means we're back level. Back 49 out of 72. So we're still over 50%, but not the great picks that we'd want to see. So the ladder, as you see there, Penrith still undefeated, so at the top. Parramatta, Melbourne, and the Rabbitoh still hold on to 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Roosters not far behind on 5th. Dragons, after that win, staying in 6th. Titans, after their win, going up to 7th. And despite beating the Warriors, the Warriors were able to stay in the 8 and keep Manly out. Manly taking 9th. Newcastle and Queensland and Raiders are 10th, 11th, and 12th. That's kind of my line, I think. I think 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th are out. I think Cronulla, Brisbane, Tigers, and Bulldogs don't have a chance unless a miracle happens. And, I think Raiders up still have a shot. But if the Raiders and Cowboys lose this week, you could probably write them off as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brad. From 12 up, it's there for the taking if one of those teams can, just find their feet and go on a run. It's difficult to see who it will be. We've still got a lot of time, but hopefully it's the Warriors that stay there.
Yeah, have all my fingers and toes crossed that the Warriors stay in the 8. So that's the ladder. Do we have any questions from the audience, Paul?
So Simon. So what do you think of the concept of the magic round? You want to, I guess, what is the magic round first?
So magic round, Paul, is a round where everyone plays at the same stadium. So this year it's at Suncorp. So they've got all 8 games at Suncorp, and they're kind of trying to bring like a festival feel to the NRL, where they try to get all the fans to a location and do it. And I personally like it. I'd love to go to one. I think next year it needs to be in New Zealand. But yeah, I think it's a great thing. You can go and watch, especially if you're a Bulldogs fan. You don't really want to watch your team, so you can go and watch some good sides, play some good football, and then stick around and watch your team get flogged. So I think it's good. It's good. There's a lot of teams that you might not get to see live due to the way the draw is with how they play your team. So you could go and watch the Storm if the Storm aren't playing locally for you. And I think it's good for the community around. You have all those fans come in and put some money into the area too, which doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brad. It's pretty cool. I'd love to get along to one. Yeah, maybe one day we can head along to one, Brad, if our bank balances allow us.
Oh well, if anyone would like to sponsor the show and sponsor the boys and do live podcasting from a magic round, then do get in touch. How does the pitch hold up by the time you get round to the last game on Sunday? Are there issues with the surface, or do the pitches hold up quite well?
From memory, I think last year it didn't hold up that well. And it'll be interesting to see at Suncorp, because after the Super Rugby game at Suncorp last weekend, the ground didn't hold up that well after that game. So throw 6 or 7 games, that has me a bit concerned with the Warriors playing on the Sunday, that the ground might be a bit bad, especially with Reece Walsh not being able to stay on his feet and on a good field. But yeah, that is a concern. I think that's why they try to stick with the bigger stadiums where the grounds are probably a bit more durable. But yeah, that's really the only concern, I think, is how the pitch holds up. At least they don't compete in scrums. So you're not going to have scrums ripping it up.
Yeah, I guess that'd be is the player welfare point of view is playing on a player's foot gives way, he twists his knee, and off he goes for that kind of stuff. So you want a good solid surface where the players can trust their footing, and then we see the best skills coming out. Really,
Yeah.
So that'd be my only concern around it. Maybe try and find somewhere with two stadiums next door to each other, like in Melbourne. You can do two stadiums pretty close, can't you? So you could then switch it around a bit.
Just go to Mount Smart and Mount Smart 2. There you go. We've done it. You fit like
Mount Smart
5 people
2.
in Mount Smart 2. Yeah, the little ground next door. Yeah, no.
I mean, you could do Eden Park at Mount Smart, for example. You could do those. You could have the Friday night games at Eden Park. It's easy to get to from the city, and then you could play the Saturday and Sunday games at Mount Smart, for example. Might be a way of doing it. But anyway, just some thoughts there. That's the only real question from the chat. I mean, Gavin does say playing Cody Walker at fullback was a dumb decision. So I couldn't personally comment.
I guess. When you get flogged by 50, most things are a dumb decision, I guess.
Yeah, I think it took him out of the action too much, and but it's just due to the fact of the players they have that they made that decision. Wouldn't have been the one I would have made, but yeah, I'm pretty sure we won't see that this week.
Cool. That's it from the chat this week.
And we're running low on time, but I know you had a question for me that will probably take me an hour to answer, so go for it.
Well, I just wanted your assessment, Brad. Now that we're a couple of months into the season, what have you made of the impact that Nathan Brown's coaching has had on the Warriors so far? And what do you like or dislike about his style? And from what you've observed, what do you think?
To be honest, I don't mind him. I don't like his decision making as of late with his team, with players that he's keeping, players that he's dropping, and his general shadiness with his selections. The last couple of weeks, the team's completely changed an hour before kickoff, and then when you talk to either the players or him, he said that they made that decision at the beginning of the week. So he already knows who's going out on the pitch, but he's not telling anyone. We spoke about it a little bit last night and said that it's great if you're trying to trick your opponent so they don't know what you're doing. But if the fans know, I'm pretty sure your opposition knows what you're going to do. So, yeah, I don't see the purpose of it.
It's been a nightmare for my fantasy team, him switching it up an hour before kickoff.
It doesn't help in fantasy, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't mind his coaching style. I think the biggest issue right now with the Warriors is their defense, and that's Justin Morgan's side of things. So you can't really critique Brown there. I would have liked them to have found a hooker by now, because Brown's idea of keeping Wade Egan as the hooker isn't working. I think Wade Egan isn't cutting the mustard, and that's the first thing I'd be changing. And yeah, I'd definitely be bringing Ewan Aiken in this week, which I'm pretty sure we're going to see. And yeah, Simon said give Brown 2 seasons considering his future. Yeah, you definitely he's only been in the job for 5 months basically, so I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. And one of his strengths is getting the best out of young players, as we've seen at Newcastle when he was there. And there's a lot of young guys at the Warriors right now. So I think with what he can do with them, I think it's going to make the Warriors stronger in the future. But I don't want us to be in a rebuilding stage where we're writing the season off. I think there's enough skill and enough talent to be a playoff side this year. He's just got to make the tough calls and drop players, potentially even saying, Cody, you're not good enough at 6. You're better for us at interchange or a 9, and making that call. I know Cody doesn't want to be a hooker, but if Roger Tuivasa-Sheck can go and be a winger to let Reece Walsh play, any player can go where Brown wants them to go, if I'm honest. If your best player is willing to go out of position, the rest have got to follow suit.
Well, you made mention of wanting another hooker, and Nathan Brown has Wade Egan in his leadership group. So does that maybe suggest to you that we're not really in for a change of hooker and he might be our guy?
Well, that's what Brown's come out and said. He said that Wade Egan is the hooker for the future for this club, which has me all kinds of worried. But Yeah, I think eventually you can be in the leadership group, but if you're not delivering on the field, eventually things are going to change. And it might get to a point where if he's sticking with Egan and it's clearly affecting the team's performance, he might get a tap on the shoulder and say, if you don't sort things, we're going to have to start looking elsewhere. So, yeah, times will come. Remind me a bit of Moneyball where the CEO, the coach kept sticking with the same player, so the CEO just got rid of the player and said, "Oh, you can't use him now." So we could even see that. We might hear that Egan's been released just so they can stop using him. I'm not sure. It might just be a bit of personal dislike to Egan at the moment for what he's delivering from me. But yeah, I still need to wait and see what happens with how they go. Got a big asterisk due to the fact we've really only had a full strength side in round 1 of this year as well.
Yeah, for sure. Our injuries and our lineups chopped and changed so much. Egan kind of shows glimpses here and there. Like on the weekend, he set up the try for Tohu Harris, but yeah, I can see other people's point of view where, like you were saying to me that you feel like he's a bit of an anchor on our attack, and I can sort of see that a little bit as well.
Yeah. All right. So thanks for the question. I'll hopefully have a question just as good for you next week. So we may as well get into the Magic round and our predictions. So no Thursday night game this week. We've got 2 on the Friday instead. So first up, we've got the Tigers and the Knights. I've gone for the Knights here. I think they showed enough to say they'll beat the Tigers. What about you?
Yeah, it depends what Tigers turn up because they've been a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde sort of team this year. I went for Knights as well because, I think if they put it together, they'll have a bit more than what the Tigers can offer up. So we'll see, but I went Knights.
Yeah. And next game, we've got the Seagulls versus the Broncos. Broncos getting to play at home in Magic Round, and I don't think they're going to get the win here. It could potentially be a big blowout if Seagulls play like they did last week with their little scoring rampage.
Possibly, but I mean, the Broncos over the past, I know they had a bad one against the Eels, but they've also weren't too bad against the Cowboys, and they were good against the Panthers. So again, it depends which Broncos turn up, but on evidence, you'd think the Seagulls get it done here, especially the way they've been looking lately with Tommy Turbo. So I've picked the Eagles.
And the first game on Saturday, we've got the Bulldogs and the Raiders. I've gone with the Raiders here. I think this is the game between the two worst teams in the comp right now, performance-wise, but I think the Raiders should beat the Bulldogs. If they don't win here, I expect to see Ricky Stewart on the chopping block.
You look, the Raiders fans might be a bit nervous if the Bulldogs are still in touching distance at halftime. And saying that, I've gone Raiders as well. The Bulldogs just look destined for somewhere in the bottom 2. So surely this week the Raiders get one. Surely.
Yeah. And next up on Saturday, we've got the Sharks and Rabbitohs. I've gone with the Rabbitohs here. I think the Sharks will be in for a hiding to nothing after that loss the Rabbitohs suffered. They'll be wanting to bounce back.
Yeah, the Sharks are another one whose confidence looks so low. The Rabbitohs obviously weren't anywhere near their best over the weekend just gone, but they should still have too much for the Sharks. You'd think Wayne Bennett will have the Rabbitohs primed for a big one after last week.
Yeah. And then the last game on Saturday, we've got Roosters Cowboys. Roosters got a lot of injuries, but I think they'll still be too good for the Cowboys, so I'll go on with Roosters.
So have I, mate. Yeah. The Cowboys have been pretty good over the past month or so as well, so might be tighter than what I would have picked at the start of the season, but especially with the Roosters injuries, but I've still stuck with the Roosters for my pick.
And that takes us to the first game on Sunday, and actually the only game we've got different in our picks this week with the Warriors versus Eels. I've gone with the Warriors here.
You went Warriors this week.
Yeah, I went Warriors this week. I feel they got a few players back. I think the Eels, they're missing some key players, and they might get the upset here. And if the Dragons can beat the Eels, the Warriors can too. So I'm going all in. and picking the Warriors.
Good man. I like it. I like that. I hope you're right because I win Eels.
Yeah.
The Eels are right near the top of the table, and you're right. They've lost a couple with Dylan Brown and a couple more, but it depends which Warriors turn up. Hopefully, an hour before kickoff, Nathan Brown throws Walsh a start and he fires our attack and we get one. But yeah, I just have a bad feeling that the Eels might do us.
Yeah, and then the second game on Sunday, we've got the Storm Dragons. Don't think we need to talk about this one much. I've gone Storm.
Same here. Think it'll be easy.
Yeah. And then the last game, we've actually got a decent game for the last game of the round for the first time, what seems forever. We've got the Titans and the Panthers. I've gone with Panthers here, though. I think Titans look shaky and Panthers just look too good.
And the Titans are missing David Fafita in this one, aren't they?
They are, yes, he's out.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's one of their main weapons, so I may have given them a slight chance if he were playing, but Panthers. I've gone Panthers.
Yeah. So we only got one different this week, which is the Warriors-Eels game. Picked everyone else the same, so there will be a definitive leader after the picks. Probably you again, maybe, knowing my luck. But Simon, before we go, we'll put out Simon's picks. We got he's got the Knights by 8, Seagulls by 4, Raiders by 8, Rabbitohs by 10, Roosters by 8, Eels by 10, Storm by 8, and Panthers by 6.
He's gone the same as me. He's a smart man.
Same as you. So that's all we've got time for tonight. So thank you all for tuning in and joining us both on the Standoff with Brad and Richie for your weekly update on rugby league. Tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. here on Facebook at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Cheers for joining me again, Richie, and good night, everyone.
Good night.